if I was to say there are a couple of things that really make a difference. Well, number one, delegates have to recognize that they're there for the students. They're not there, and I'm speaking from experience now. They are not there to have some cushy hotel room. They are not there to go shopping.
Golfing,
They are to
all
be
sorts.
with the students at all times and make sure that their needs are taken care of. You come last on the list. And I say that when I've looked at other delegates and shake my head. The other thing is helping the kids with their backboards and making sure that it flows well, that the grammar is there. If they have time, can they collect more data? Teaching them what graphs would probably be best. The statistical analysis is usually really important if they want to medal. So helping them out with that. So either you teach them how to do the statistics or find somebody who can. But
Yes.
very important, and that they understand it. And then I really feel that the night before the students are judged, that you get everybody together and everyone in a circle bombards people with questions about their project. And what I've learned in the past, because I've done some radio interviews, when somebody sits down with you and asks you a bunch of questions, it gets all that information to the top of your head. And then when they decide to start the record, you actually have all that information right there. And it's the same thing with the kids, refreshing them because it's probably been a while since they've done a presentation. Getting everybody to ask them a different question makes them think about what might come up. And especially if there's a new question that they have to think about, especially when you're dealing with environmental or ethics, or, they have to have some answers for all of that. But that always worked because I found, and I have two of my girls have been to science fairs twice each. I've been to 4 in person, 1 in virtual. That's incredibly important that they prep that way, that they get all that information there, that they're not waiting for the second judge because they're kind of lousy on the first judge. They need to be on the go right out the bat. So
Can I like to add a couple things to what Linda just said. Helping them to prepare their project and make improvements, and that doesn't have to be you for, you say you've got 4 or 5 kids that are going, like get some help, and there should be people on the committee, other people that have experience and can help with that. But I think it's important that somebody takes responsibility for seeing that that's done right. It doesn't have to be just you working with all of them. And I know I've helped out a number of times as chair and vice chair and regional coordinator, even when I wasn't going, right. And I might take one of the kids and just work with them. But it's important to help them to put their best foot forward. So there's all kinds of things in our committee. We also work with them to have all their posters printed, and we get that done at Staples, and that's in our handout, and we pay for that, and hopefully regions can, but if they can't, then the kids need to. But just facilitating all of that stuff to be done so that the kids are prepared and they have what they need. I think that's a really important part of being a delegate. If you're going to go away with these kids, just don't show up at the airport and say, "Yeah, we're ready to go." that's
Uh,
that's not doing your full job.
can I add something to that, Kevin?
Absolutely.
One of the things that we've been doing for the last decade is insisting that the finalists upload their reports and their project onto a Google Drive, and then give us access to go through it and fine tune their language, fine tune their
Yep.
write up and everything. So we do that as a committee. We have a handful of us that'll go through and work with certain ones, and sometimes we even live edit with the kids while they're online too.
yeah,
So
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think just kind of Linda was putting out there, like delegates should make sure that that's happening, right? It's not solely upon them, but they should be knowing kind of what's going on, so that
And the
the kids
biggest
get
chore
there.
is those kids who have been to or have not been to a Canada-wide before and don't know the language that they need to be using, and especially grade 7s, but it can apply to the high schoolers too, that they really have to ramp it up. I understand that they don't have to do the 5-page essay anymore, which is unfortunate, I think. Fortunate for me because I'm the one who usually corrects them, but unfortunate because they really learned so much about writing for university through that 5-page essay. But yes, their language, and they have to understand there are periods and there's a reason for having a period and making it flow, and that, you know, your storyboard is a good story and it should be told that way.
Right. So that's a really important part of what delegates should be involved with. And then if they've been involved, then if kids have questions or concerns about it, you know, then you're aware. You kind of know where they're at, and it's not brand new to you. Once you get your poster made up to put on, then it's kind of, you're pretty much done. I mean, you could maybe do a few little edits on top of that, but you know, so you want to really get it done right before you go, because you can't do anything major once you get there. So
I also like to collect stories from students about being judged, because there's some pretty comical ones out there. And the students have to understand that you might have a grumpy judge who's just going to look at you and go, you know, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't like your project. Or you might have someone who's very flowery and wonderful about the whole thing, and you end up not getting where you think you might should place. So I like to collect those stories from the students and tell them about it as that at breakfast, that, you know, you're going to have as many different types of personalities in judges as you do out there in the real world. So just beware. Just because they don't say anything to you or they look grumpy or sad or anything else doesn't mean they don't like your project.
One interesting thing happened when I was with Kimberly, who was our head judge, but she's off with maternity leave. We went to the Taiwan International Science and Engineering Fair, and she had a project that was looking at energy and looking at the efficiency of like the tar sands or the oil sands, and like part of it was that more energy goes in than what we get out. And this judge in Taiwan said, that's stupid. That can't be so. You know, like, why would we do that? Well, because we're using one type of energy that's more readily available to get another type of energy that's not so readily. Anyways, he just didn't like her project because he went, that's not true. But she actually got documentation from a university researcher about it. But it's the kind of thing that can happen. Like somebody can, that can't be right. And so you have to be able to kind of put that aside and not let that fluster you too much and keep going, right? You know, not that it has to be anything as serious as that, but sometimes they might not agree with what you found. Okay, well, then maybe you can learn something, but maybe they might be wrong too. And hopefully other judges who might know more might know that you are correct. So you can't get too down by a particular judge. You really have to do your best with all of them and just keep your chin up.
So you two have spoken quite a bit about what to do before leaving for the Canada-wide Science Fair. What's the main role or responsibility for delegates when they're actually there?
I feel being with the kids. So when they're finished their judging, you're there to pick them up and go for lunch, ask them how it went, kind of do a debrief. Another thing is too, really getting them to understand what the role of the ambassadors are, so that if they're having any issues or a meltdown or need water or anything like that, that they approach those ambassadors right away and get some help.
Sorry, who are the ambassadors?
You don't have ambassadors anymore? Those are people.
Yeah,
those
yeah.
Are
I think I saw something
There's
about
about 20 of them, right? I think there's about 20 of them throughout the whole fair.
So
yeah,
those are
they're former
They're
Canada-wide Science Fair alumni
Okay.
that
Yeah.
are, you know, like they're gone to university kind of, you know, probably
Okay.
they're the
they've
ones
been
who
to the
are
fair
allowed to
within the
be
last
in
5 years.
judged.
And then so they know,
Oh, I see.
and kids that often were a number of times, so they experience and have good experience of being on the student side of things, and they're there
Okay.
to
We're
assist
not
us.
allowed in the room.
Right. Okay.
So
So yeah, it's kind of like dropping your kids off at kindergarten for the first time, as they go into the judging area and you lose contact with them. But being there to pick them up, having breakfast there together, listening to them, put the cell phone away, and get to know the kids.
well, and get to know a little bit somebody who might be struggling, and if they really need to
Like
call home at the beginning, facilitate that, talk with the parents even on your own, to kind of make sure that we can put them at ease so they can enjoy the week and they can have their best experience, especially with younger kids. That's really important. um and you have to, another important thing I think is set some set some boundaries a bit. They just can't be doing whatever, because there'll be some that will just take total advantage of that, and then you won't see them. You won't even know where they went because have decided to go off, and that's what they can do. But if you're really wanting to be a prudent parent, as it talks about in YSC terminology, you have to kind of know where they are, and you're responsible for them. And if something bad were to happen to them, you're responsible, and so you have to take that responsibility seriously. Doesn't mean you have to be on top of them every second, but you have to let them know that I need to know. And yes, there's times when they have a bit of flexibility about what they could be doing. um, there's usually the night on the town where you might go for dinner, and the YSC gives you money and stuff, but you might be going to a shopping mall or something. Okay, so you don't need to be having the whole group of 5 or 6 shopping in the same store all the time, but we're in the mall and we're going to meet here in an hour or whatever, and you're not going anywhere else, and things like that, right? So you just have to make sure that you do kind of set boundaries, and let kids know that you're watching and that you're also there, right? That they have somebody, because ambassadors aren't available then. Now it's the adult or adults that are with your group that are going to be in charge. And I don't know, just being a parent.
You got it, Kevin. I think one of the other things that we often did as delegates is we actually got their cell phone numbers, so we would text with them continuously.
Absolutely, you have to have that stuff before you go.
But I would say the main job of a delegate is time management, is to make sure they're following the schedules as accordingly, and they're going to the places that they're supposed to be at, right? We've got the master schedule on the back of our name tags, and so do they. No, you're absolutely right. If we have a night on the town or something like that, and there's some free time, let them go. But the important part is they should at least let you know where they're going, and they should answer you if you do text them or phone them, as opposed to ignoring it. So that's one of the rules that you might want to set in place. And what we often did is we often had the older kids sort of chaperone the younger ones if they're going off somewhere.
Absolutely. And we would try to make sure that they didn't ever go off on their own.
Exactly.
Like
no kid should be off
even if you're a group of 3, you just can't,
no kid should be
on
there.
Or in some case, if you got a group of 3, okay, and Johnny will go with Bobby from another region or something, so that they're together. Both of the delegates know they're together and stuff, and because they don't necessarily all want to go in a small group like that, all want to go together, but they need to be not alone. So, I mean, those are just kinds of things. Hopefully, if you've had kids or you've been teaching or working with kids, that these things need to happen. But when you assume that, then that can be troublesome because not necessarily everybody has or thinks about those kinds of things. Like, I'm just here, okay, tell me when you're going to be back. Oh, yeah, well, maybe I need to know a bit more than that, because you just can't go anywhere, and You know, like when we were in when the fair was in Vancouver in 2005, we went down kind of near to the Chinatown area. But I remember one of the organizers, Cam, was getting up and saying, Chinatown, no go, you know, and you had to stay on this side of streets and stuff like that, you know, stay out of the danger areas, right? So those kinds of things should be attended to if you're going to keep your kids safe. And it doesn't mean that they can't have some fun, but it has to be safe because we're a long way from home and we don't want anything bad to happen to these kids for a whole host of reasons, right? And parents are trusting us. Parents are trusting us to make sure that my kid comes home safely. So I don't know. Those are just important things. And sometimes you see kids who their delegates or a delegate has basically absconded on them. And so I think Linda's said something about, or has had experience certainly with, you know, and Jenny, our chair, with, you know, adopting orphans who seem to have been left alone.
When I was at Trent University, the dormitories were pathetic, at least the ones that we went into. They were not the new ones. And one delegate went down, looked at a room and said, there's no freaking way I'm staying here. Phoned her husband to get her a hotel and walked out.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's, well, I mean, all we can do is provide information from our experience.
Mm-hmm.
And what people do is their own experience, their own choice. But really, why are we there? That's what it comes down. Why are we there?
Mm-hmm.
And if
Yeah.
we're not there for the kids, then we shouldn't be there.
Fair enough.
We did have a delegate too who was a parent, and she apparently spent most of her time shopping while she was there. Very little time with the students.
Yeah,
So priority really is on the students then, making sure they're safe, but also supported emotionally,
yep,
and making sure they get to where they need to be on time.
right, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well,
Is there anything else? Any other questions or comments from Fabian, or tips and tricks and from all of your experience?
One of the things as a delegate that we did, and it's a little extra work,
Remember,
is to put together a blog at the end of the each day, and mostly could be photos and things, but with a few captions on it. It just makes parents feel that they're part of the experience. And when we come home and they're greeting us at the airport, that's one of the big things that they always say, you know, we've been following you guys along. We see all the things that you guys are doing. So I know it takes a bit of time, and it certainly took me a lot of time at the end of the night. So, but it's something I would encourage you to contribute to if you can as a delegate.